Hi Taurus, welcome to a tarot reading for the week beginning on the full blue moon of March 31st and continuing for the first week in April. It's Raina, and the thing I wanted to tell you about this full moon is it's falling in your 6th house of health. So full moon periods are times when, they're like detoxifying times. So that does connect to the health. As a matter of fact, there's something called the moon diet. So if you Google it, you can see that people have lost weight if they just juice fast on the day, you start exactly when the new moon hits and you continue. I tried it and it didn't. They said you could lose like 6 pounds in one day. It didn't happen for me, but I do believe that during the waning moon, which is the period following the full moon, that it's considered a time when it's easier to lose weight. But obviously you have to take into account your own personal health conditions on doing any of that. So not offering health advice at all. but that is going to be an area where you're thinking about things, because the full moon can bring awareness to this area of life. And what else is happening? Maybe something at work where you find out something about one of your coworkers or what's been really going on, because sometimes full moons can bring secrets coming out. And if you think about it, secrets coming out is kind of like a form of detoxing, because there's a certain, it's kind of poisonous to be in an environment where people are keeping something from you. And you might kind of sense it, but you don't know what it is. So purging that allows you to know where you stand. So there's that. And you might be ending a job, leaving a job for some reason. So, or maybe like some work that you've done has come to a culmination. Maybe you've been working really hard on a project, and that is finishing or coming to an end. Okay. And as I said, this is a general reading, so it can go into different areas of life. I really like the Magician card. Oh, for once I got a reverse card. I haven't gotten many of those lately. Picking an additional card. Okay. Now, it's not that, like, if you get a double card, that means anything bad in and of itself. But as the outcome card, it just doesn't lend itself to some kind of a completion in my mind, because of what it stands for. So I'm not just trying to pick cards until I find a positive one to end the reading with. So the heart of the matter is represented by the Magician card, which is a card of self-empowerment and taking the initiative. The number 1 is about starting new things, taking the initiative and doing so in an independent way, being very resourceful. So this obviously can be in the area of your own work. Maybe you try to get, maybe you are in between jobs and you decide to hire yourself. That would be the perfect example of that in terms of employment. But even if you're working for somebody else, you may say, okay, I'm doing that for now, but I know that I have the ability to work for myself. I don't have to do this. You may, the thing is, it's like I think that's one of the mistakes that sometimes people make, is that they just say, I'm going to work for myself, and they don't really understand that sometimes it takes a long time to establish yourself. It's not just overnight, and maybe they're too they're just inflated in their expectations, and then they think they're a failure when they're really not. Usually Taurus people, though, are very patient, and they're cautious, and they're not going to just assume that they're going to be able to support themselves if they have their own business. So it might be on a different level. You're thinking, whatever is going on, you're thinking in terms of relying on yourself, self-reliance, and that's good. So even in relationships, if you have felt more dependent on somebody in a relationship and that has held you back in some way. What crosses you is represented by the Four of Pentacles. You can see a person holding on to the money, so it can be excessive greed. And even the Devil card is also in the Major Arcana, kind of reflecting that sort of materialistic mindset. Yes, can Taurus be that way? Certainly. Actually, being a Pentacles is the earth element, of course, on that level as well. And let me just keep going, because, you know, sometimes it kind of fleshes things out a little bit more. The Nine of Swords is the root cause. So that can indicate anxiety, and I'm assuming for some people it's surrounding money, or even the job itself. If you're kind of like hearing through the grapevine, that's kind of what I'm also sensing with this full moon, that perhaps you've been thinking that there's been whispers, okay, there are going to be layoffs or something, and maybe you're even staying up at night. And hopefully you'll find out, the air will get cleared on that, so that you don't have to wonder if you're the one on the chopping block. You know, because that's half of the torture, is wondering if you're the one. If you already know what's happening, you can start to deal with it. But when you're hanging in the balance, but it goes back to that Four of Pentacles. You know what just popped into my mind is a quote from the Bible, and actually it has to do, I think Jesus said, he that loves his life shall lose his life, or something like that. And but I was thinking in terms of money, when you cling to something, maybe life can mean anything material, that you lose it because you're creating resistance, whether you know it or not. You're fear-based. You know, the same thing happens in relationships. People cling to another person, and out of fear, a fear that the person's going to abandon them, and guess what happens? The person abandons them. The person may perceive the insecurity in the other, and it turns them off, and they just start to think less of the person, because they think that they have low self-esteem. So if you can go through life, it's not that you just act like, oh, I don't need money to live, but not being beholden to it, you know, not being a slave to it. I think it flows more easily that way. That's just been my, I don't know, experience. You know, I was going to say my limited experience, because obviously everyone has a different level of what prosperity means to them. And if you are just thinking that you want to have you want to be wealthy beyond belief, then anything less than that is going to feel inferior. So sometimes you have to change your expectations, your belief patterns of what you need to be happy. But the Nine of Swords can be you in your head too much, where you're concerned about, overly concerned about it, but it's really not as bad as you're making it out to be. The other thing too is if this is a personal relationship, it could be with somebody, maybe they are a fellow earth sign, like a Capricorn. I'm thinking Capricorn because we got another one here. But that person may be creating anxiety within you. The other earth sign besides Taurus is Virgo. Okay. The spiritual message is represented by the Empress. You see that Venus symbol? And it's even a heart by her. That is the spiritual message, which can be either looking at the situation or offering spiritual offering a spiritual perspective on the situation. So basically, what the Empress represents is you, Taurus, who you are, what you represent. Now, I'll just show this card once more, and people have told me that there are pomegranates on her dress instead of watermelon slices. But you see this woman, look at the chair she's sitting in. Very luxurious. She's holding it looks like a staff, or like she's royalty. I don't really know what that represents, but she's living a life of luxury and leisure. She's being very, laid back. She's not striving. So you take that contrast to this card, which is just so full of angst, and that anxiety. And that's your true nature, is to represent what the Empress represents. You want, in life, creature comforts. You want to feel like you have leisure time, that you don't have to rush all the time. So if you're in a job where you don't have that, where you're working long hours and you're harried and you don't have time to relax, you just have time to go home and make dinner and go to bed. Maybe you want to have a child, but you're just working crazy hours, and the money may be coming in between you, the love of money. And when I say love of money, I mean greed may be coming in between you and expressing yourself in the way that you came here, if you're a sun in Taurus, is to be like, an earth mother, child of the senses, somebody who can stop and smell the flowers. And so, how are you cultivating this in your life? Or are you kind of turning your back on that because you want something? But the Magician says you can create your own reality, your own life. So if you're thinking, but I want to make X amount of money, you can. I mean, you can really intend that for yourself if that's very important for you. And you can have your own schedule. So just at least entertain the notion in your head. I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks with Taurus, is being very, especially if you have Mercury in Taurus, is being very rigid in your mindset and thinking, if you think that something can't happen, then you might as well be a Capricorn, in terms of pessimism, that negative, that shadow side of Capricorn, because you hold on to things very stubbornly, including ideas, and that's an illusion, because once you can really embody the Magician, you can create magic in your life. Advice is the Queen of Wands. So this is empowering yourself, and also, but not losing your intuition, the feminine side of things. It can be that you need to be confident as you deal with your life at this time, because you may be in a kind of a process where you're trying to perhaps change some things. You have, during this time, the sun being in the 12th house, this energy of the kind of subconscious mind, or even past lives coming and influencing you and maybe asking of you to kind of expand your horizons and not just have tunnel vision. And so there may be influences coming from a very subtle level about which direction to take in your life. But usually, when the sun is in the 12th house, it's kind of wrapping up that cycle before your solar return, which happens at the end of April. What's coming in is represented by the Four of Swords in reverse. So you're getting ready to emerge from, I think this is kind of talking about what I just said, that 12th house activity, which is kind of that resting phase. And that may be when things start to really happen for you. So you may have a few more weeks of kind of feeling like you're hanging in the balance, but then you're going to be raring to go and kind of enter your whole new solar cycle. The outcome is represented by the Devil card. This can be understanding what holds you back. If you want to look at it as a cautionary message, be careful. Oh, it's funny, this looks like the Lovers, but in bondage, right? So that lust instead of love. And maybe that's with this person. And also, by the way, you may be with somebody who maybe even married to somebody and it's really, they have money. And you really feel this sense of bondage being in that situation, but you are afraid of losing your lifestyle. So that might have to change as well. Again, this is associated with Capricorn. And then the other card is the Eight of Pentacles. So this can be a card of working very hard and being diligent at your work. So maybe some people are training for something. Perhaps you're preparing so that you can be like the magician and do your own thing. But you have to get a certain certification or training in order to qualify. Or you just the magician doesn't mean you have to work for yourself, by the way. It could just mean that you want to better yourself. And you realize that you're the only one that can do it for you. Maybe you've been waiting for some kind of promotion, but you're going to take the bull by the horns, pardon the pun, since you're the bull, and make it happen yourself. And any kind of romantic situation, maybe you'll just lose yourself in your work so you won't have to deal with it. Or maybe you're working extra hard or training for some new position because you are planning on leaving a relationship that is not serving you, but you need to have a certain amount of money to be able to live on your own. Okay, well, as typical for me, I tend to go quite long even for a weekly reading. So I hope that you enjoyed this, Taurus, and if you'd like a private reading, check out my website. The link is below. Take care. Bye.